Welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. This is the post-election moving into municipal election show. We can, for those who are sick and tired of politics, I'm afraid it's not gone yet. But for those who love politics, well, we've got plenty for you. It never just seems to stop. Provincially, Alberta is in a complete mess right now. The hospitals are overrun. Kenny is on the run. He's got caucus members sniping at him. He's got board members being kicked off the party board. He's got board members resigning from the party board. There's been a lot of discussion on how long Premier Kenny is going to manage to stay at the head of the UCP. So we're always going to be watching and reporting on that. The Western Standard, of course, constantly gets exclusives and breaking news on what's going on in the UCP caucus. It drives the UCP quite mad at times, but if they behave themselves better, we wouldn't have things to break and report on them. Now, as we get into this municipal campaign, I got a couple of great guests lined up today, by the way. So Jeromy Farkas, he's a mayoral candidate. Most people have heard of him. He was a councillor for a term there. He certainly was the thorn in Nintzy's side throughout his time in there. He's always been a consistent supporter of small government. He's thrown his hat in the ring for mayor. And from the last polling, he appears to be the front runner at this time. But there's still a lot of campaign time left. And there are, I think, 29 candidates for mayor. It's just ridiculous and it's insane. And many of those candidates are ridiculous and insane. But there's about 4 or 5 of them who are running some pretty serious campaigns. So we'll be talking to Jeromy and getting an update, see how the campaign's going and what he's looking to do. He's been releasing campaign platform aspects to the media in this last couple of days, and he's got more coming. As well, I'm going to speak to Marcel Latouche. Some might remember here listening to him. He was a regular on the Danielle Smith show back when that radio station used to have good content. Marcel focuses very much on municipal issues, municipal politics, again, small government politics. He's written a number of books, and he's running the PAC, or third-party advertisers, what they're calling him in this elections, called Lead Calgary. Not to be confused with the hard left-wing group called Lead Now. Marcel's is quite a different organization altogether. And yeah, it's just always good to chat with Marcel because he adds a lot of common sense. He studies the bureaucracy. He studies the financing of municipal governments and civic governments and has a lot to say. Their group is going to be watching candidates and putting out a list of who they feel is appropriate to support and who not. Speaking of support, I do want to thank our members. This is what we've always got to remember on here. The Western Standard is an independent media outlet. We aren't getting any of the funding from the federal government. We aren't asking for any funding from the federal government. We are solely reliant on members like you who take out subscriptions. And for $10 a month, you get full unfettered access to the Western Standard, its content, its exclusives, videos, commentary, breaking news. It's a really good deal. For those who have already subscribed, thank you very much. And for those who haven't yet, give it a try. It's a free trial for a month, and it's only $100 if you take out a whole year. Try it for a month. Then you can choose whether or not to take out a month-by-month subscription. I think you'll find it worthwhile. It's cheaper than the old newspaper subscriptions used to be, and you don't have a whole pile of old newspapers to get rid of afterwards. It's all digital. It's beautiful. And the more of you guys who get out there and subscribe, advertisers come in. We are, a capitalist business here. As we can prove that you guys are watching us, people are happy to pay to throw a few ads your way and try and turn your ear, and it keeps us being able to produce more content. It's just a great, beautiful cycle of capitalism. So thank you for those who've subscribed already, and to those who haven't, please give it a trial. As well, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, give it a share. Spread the word, that we've got this kind of covered. You don't have to stick to the same old mainstream stuff. There is an alternative. The Western Standard provides it. Subscribe on YouTube. You'll see these things when they break. We stream live stuff. We have live specials. We covered the federal election. We're going to cover the municipal election on election night and see who's won in Calgary. But you'll get those updates when we get things that are breaking. And we go to events in person and broadcast live from those as well. So one thing, I'll show how this municipal election's been getting. Yeah, I don't pretend to be unbiased. This is but I'm not saying who to vote for yet. I will say one who not to vote for, though, because we see the same old Jody Gondek. She was a councillor. She's sort of Nintzy's preferred heir apparent for mayor. She's, as people said, just a new version of Nintzy. Stephen Carter is her campaign manager. He was Nintzy's prime man there. Stephen Carter was also tied to Alison Redford. He's really brought a lot of winners into the Alberta political sphere. Or Jan, or what was her name again? Boy, I'm forgetting it now. It's good, probably. She was a provincial one who crossed to the NDP, tried to run for leadership, but then backed out when she couldn't get enough support with the PCs. Boy, her name is escaping me, but it's probably for the better. She was quite an individual. She left Notley hanging. Either way, Stephen Carter was tied with her as well. Well, Gondek has always been pushing hard for more lockdowns, more masking, more vaccinations, firing unvaccinated people, that sort of thing, closing up restaurants. You know, she was fighting, taking shots at Kenny chronically when we opened for the summer. She's always in the news for these things. Well, she had a little private event there, or somebody was holding one for her last Friday, I believe it was. And it was tweeted out briefly by Emma May, who's something of a social media maven, I guess you could say. This beautiful close quarters selfie, just smiling and giggling away. Isn't that nice? But they don't live in the same household. They're not wearing masks. They sure as hell are not 2 meters apart. I was a surveyor for 20 years. You know, you can question my qualifications on many, many things, but I do know what 2 meters looks like. And that's not even friggin' close. Hypocrisy at its very finest. When Gondek is on the news, if she can get beyond Nenshi on the news and telling us how important it is that we lock down, how important it is that we stay home if we don't have to be home, how important it is for us to stay within our cohorts and not get out to spreader events. And then she's at some sort of private event where she's giving out close quarters selfies with people that aren't from her own household. When I did tweet that out to MMA and said, asked, was this a mask-free event? She immediately blocked me on Twitter and deleted the tweet. But the beautiful thing with the internet is it's forever. That was screen snapped. It went around. This is, there's all sorts of things I've put up with in politics, but you know what I won't? Hypocrisy. Gondek is a hypocrite. Nothing less. She's a pure hypocrite. She's telling you what to do, and she won't do it herself. That's a sign of her character. This is a campaign time, and she's even, and not just a sign of her character, she's not that bloody bright. When you know you've been campaigning on that, why are you giving out selfies with people out there showing you breaking the rules that you're trying to have the government impose on everybody else? You're a hypocrite. You do not deserve to be mayor, and I really look forward to you being defeated in October on elections day. Now, yeah, I wouldn't be too sad if Jeromy Farkas becomes mayor. There's a few others. A great deal of them would be better than Jody Gondek. I've talked to a number of the mayoral candidates over the last few months. So I'm going to get in there, and actually I'm going to start with Marcel Latouche so we can frame things up and get a feel of what's going on in this election, what the campaigns are about. And then after that, I'm going to have a one-on-one chat with mayoral candidate Jeromy Farkas. Okay, thanks for joining me, Marcel. It's always good to see you. We're finally turning the page from the long, as it felt, federal election, and now moving on into a civic election going on in Calgary, which is quite a heated one. Now, something different this time is you were with a third-party advertising group called Lead Calgary, right?
All right. First, let me say something, Cory. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Because since we've released our platform, the media has totally ignored us, having covered the Chamber of Commerce platform, which in my view has got a lot of conflict of interest in it, and yet they have not contacted us at all. So I have to thank you very much for allowing me to elaborate on Lead Calgary's platform for the municipal election.
Yeah, well, it's a shame they aren't looking at everything that's coming out there. I mean, there's certainly some other third-party advertisers. There's a large union one that seems to be getting a heck of a lot of coverage. So we do want to make sure that everybody who's trying to get a message out there can do so. So, no, we're happy to have you here.
So, the unions have got something like $2 million involved in there. We are a smaller PAC. There are other PACs out there, but we are the only one which has actually made public a platform for what this election is supposed to be. As usual, my previous work, I've been doing this for 20 years, and we've always said that we have ideas. People may agree or disagree with it, but we want these ideas to be made public. And yet, the media has totally ignored our platform since we released it last week. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you would ask and question me as much as you want, and I'm open.
Well, absolutely, and it's definitely a comprehensive platform you've got. So, I mean, your first portion of it, I guess, for your key issue and value is restoring fiscal responsibility to Calgary. So, perhaps if you expand on how and in which ways that can be restored.
You see, one of the problem we have here in Calgary is that most people are not financial wizards. Most people are not accountants in the public. In the public. So they don't really understand what is going on at City Hall, because there is no transparency anymore. So therefore, there's no accountability. To restore fiscal responsibility, we must have an open discussion of what is going on in budgets. We need to have new ways of doing the budget. We continuously have surpluses, and yet we have huge taxes. The problem that we have is that the public do not understand that having accounting in the public sector is not the same as having accounting in the private sector. So therefore, there is a sort of a cloud that the administration and members of council can use to obfuscate results. And that's what we want to do. We want to have fiscal responsibility and transparency. And to start doing this, we must first look at a new way of doing budgets. For years, personally, and right now, I'm proposing that we use zero-based budgeting, because the zero-based review that the city is using now is a scam. True zero-based budgeting is a process whereby you review every single service delivery, right as if you're starting all over again. This is when you are going to be able to see where you can build efficiencies due to new technology or new ways of delivering service. You have to look at new ways of delivering service. Now, let me give you an example. If NASA is now looking at private industries to put men into space, why can't we, for instance, deliver services in collecting garbage by a private company if it is more efficient? I am not saying, and Lead Calgary is not saying, that every service should be delivered by the private sector, but we must look at it and deliver services whenever possible. Where it is more efficient to do so by the private sector, we should look at it and do it. What we have done in the past, talking about again as garbage collection, they implemented a service of 3 bins. Then down the road, they decided maybe this is not efficient, so let's have a pilot project. What we advocate is you have pilot projects before you implement a proposal or a service delivery. I mean, that's putting the cart before the horse. And this is the kind of stuff you have at City Hall. The question is, for you to have fiscal transparency, we must understand that the current way of doing things has not worked. Because if people do not understand finance, which as an economist and a finance accountant, I understand that it may be difficult for the ordinary person to understand the intricacies of accounting standards and so forth. But there's one thing that taxpayers know, is that when money is taken out of their pockets and flows to the government, and their services do not increase, but their taxes go up.
Well, that's it. There's always a lot of room for efficiency, and putting it into terms that, you know, a non-actuary could look into. So something that interestingly broke into the news recently, you probably saw that, was, for example, a Tim Hortons that was in a hospital, I believe in Ontario, and it managed to lose over $1 million. I mean, you have a captive audience, or customer base, I should say, going on in there. And Tim Hortons is usually almost a license to print money. Leave it to a government facility, though, to manage to actually make it lose money. And that's an example that just about everybody could understand.
Exactly. I mean, people are not stupid. They may not understand the intricacies of accounting, but they understand when money is flowing out of their pockets all the time. I mean, this is what Lead Calgary stands for. we keep hearing from councillors in the past council that we have a revenue problem. That is not true. There is no revenue problem. We have a massive spending problem. For 20 years, in my other life as the president of the Institute of Public Sector Accountability, I have monitored and done research on municipal finance. Finally, last year, the CDAO Institute has confirmed what I have been saying for the past 20 years. Municipalities have massive surpluses. In effect, the CDAO Institute confirmed that all municipalities in Canada have accumulated 11 billion, that's with a B, $billion in accumulated surplus. The city of Calgary has about $500 million of reserves right now. And I tell you why don't they have a revenue problem. Have you seen lately, just because it is an election this year, we've been able to say zero increase in property taxes. Then we've been spending money and throwing it at all sorts of things, which include millions of dollars for the so-called revitalization of downtown. I have asked my friends in the construction industry. There is no such thing as revitalizing the downtown of Calgary by implementing and doing residential accommodation with those buildings. There are only perhaps 4 to 6 buildings that can be done into residential. Are we once again throwing a lot of money to the wind and then saying, oh, we made a proposal? There are some councillors today who are already saying, we've had 13 applicants who are coming forward to help in the revitalization of those buildings. Now, let me tell you something. Calgarians are not stupid. When you give free money, there will be many more applicants. It's that simple.
Yeah, they will follow it. So one of your policy platform portions there then is, as you've said, they're spending in a whole bunch of areas where they really shouldn't be spending. They've got the spare income coming in. They don't need to tax further. So assuming you cut away, a lot of the excess spending or gain more efficiency in other areas, I see it says focus on core services for everyday Calgarians. So what would you call the core services? What should a civic government be providing?
Well, the core services are the security of the people, which is the police. This is why we are totally against the defunding the police. People's security comes first. There is no doubt whatsoever. If you don't have security, you can't have a good life. That's one. Then you have the issues of the fire department, for instance. That's another department that the city should be looking at. Well, core services are maintaining the roads, looking after the parks. And how we do this, we have to change the way we look after parks. The city should not be into recreation anymore. I mean, golf courses should not be a government-managed recreation. We've got to open up to non-profit sports organizations to deliver some of those services. Not all of them, but there are many sport organizations who can do a better job than 15 people sitting in an office tower downtown. We've got to start looking at those things. Core services are the essential services that can be delivered to the best knowledge and the best efficient way by the government. And once again, we've got to look at ways to do that by saying we have zero-based budgeting, which is an examination of every single activity which is currently being delivered by the city. Once we do this, we can then say which one should stay, which one should go, which one we should do in partnership with the private sector.
So one of the other aspects in your platform as well, or what you're promoting, is to create a climate of economic growth and entrepreneurship. Now, I imagine some of that is presumably with tax reduction, with reduced or with a better efficiency within the city. One of the areas that's a real problem, I've got some recent documents on that as well, is trying to get new developments going. The red tape is unbelievable. It takes about 8 years from concept to actually breaking ground on a new development in the city, just due to all of the applications and licensing and things such as that. Is that sort of the area as well where you'd look into to create that business climate that might draw in some new investment?
No. I tell you what, there is a report that just came out 2 days ago talking about affordable housing. The biggest problem in Canada for not having affordable housing is supply. It is not demand, it is supply. The problem with supply is too much regulation, too much red tape created by administration who are, in the shoveling of papers rather than looking at how we can make things easier. Having said that, let's look at the sort of red tape that we can diminish. We've got to reduce the red tape. And what is going to happen is that council should start taking the lead, a new council, that they make policies and administration administer and manage. It is not the way or the other way around, because there is a fact in management that administration will always look after themselves and how they can protect their jobs and create jobs for themselves. And council, a new council, should be looking at new ways of doing things and how they communicate with administration, how the relationship between managing and making policy should be very, very separate. And we should be looking at this. Now, you asked me the other question. What was it? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just speaking on bringing in efficiencies again and means to bring in more business in entrepreneurship. But I'd like actually just to go further, because you covered most of it. This is a big election. I mean, we don't see this very often, maybe once in a generation. We're getting a new mayor no matter what at the end of this. What is it, 9 to 10 councillors are going to be replaced in this election. This could be a real opportunity for some rejuvenation and some change coming into the city hall. Will you guys eventually be endorsing particular candidates, or are you just just promoting the causes?
Yes, we are. We are doing a survey right now, and we will be releasing a list, and I will make it official before the 4th of October, because that's the first set of advanced polling. The other thing I want to talk about is one of our main proposals is to ask the province to review the taxation system, because the property tax system is a major, major problem of what is happening in the whole province. The market value assessment situation is totally wrong. And we have already submitted a paper to the municipal minister to look at this. This is at the core of the problem. While many councillors believe that there is a tax room, that is the biggest fallacy and the biggest scam that councillors have been saying for years. There is no such thing as a tax room. The city of Calgary is a collector of taxes for the province, for the education portion. There is no tax room, because if the province takes it over, we will still have to pay for the education and any other taxes that councillors wants to burden us with. Now, the problem that we have is councillors have always been able, the past council, however, have been able to try and negotiate with the province to get more taxing powers, as opposed to reduce the amount of taxes that we pay. And that's what we are going to try and see. We want councillors in the new council to come over and start looking at the cost of doing business in Calgary. And we demand that these people are responsible for managing the fiscal affairs of the city in a more responsible manner.
Great. So in Lead Calgary, you're working not just alone. There's others working in conjunction and collaboration with you guys on this?
No, we are keeping ourselves separate, actually.
Oh, good. Okay.
So because otherwise we are going to be influenced by other issues. I mean, we are not saying that we have all the answers, but right at this moment, we have a platform. We are going to work with this platform. People who agree with us or disagree with us can contact us at leadcalgary.ca. We have no problems answering questions. But there is one big issue that we've got to talk about. is the so-called collaboration at City Hall. Many candidates are running on the fact that there is no collaboration at City Hall. I will tell you the truth. Collaboration existed, but it existed among 12 of them in council against 3 others who apparently didn't agree with their ideas. That's why they say there was no collaboration. People who have ideas which are different from council should never be labeled as not being able to collaborate just because they stand by their principles. So what we want to say is there is a group of people right now, including Shane Keating, who's going to leave and retire, who's running a PAC on his own himself, and they are backing existing councillors. Our point is, if you want change, why would you stick with the past? This PAC from Keating and backing other councillors, including one who had retired completely, Putmans in Ward 6, to come back because he used to support taxation and so on and so forth under Bronconnier and Nancy. The problem we have is we have a group of people who would like to see the status quo. And these are the old guard of council. This is why they are supporting each other and saying, we are putting our executive assistant to replace us. We are putting all names back into the fray to support our legacies. But these, as far as I'm concerned, are failed policies. So you don't want the same people or people supported by the old council to be elected, because otherwise we are not going to have change. So this is what Lead Calgary is putting forward. Change means change. Change of people, change of policies, so that we get fiscal responsibility, transparency, and real collaboration, not obfuscation and ostracizing people who have different ideas.
Yeah, no, it's been a terrible hornet's nest in there for quite some years now, and we'd be wasting an opportunity for rejuvenation if we just bring back a bunch more of the ones who are determined to be the heirs of the positions. I really don't care for that when I see somebody, I'm leaving my spot, but this is who should replace me. Hey, leave that to the voters. They'll pick somebody good to replace you, and perhaps it's the one you prefer, perhaps not. But for them to kind of try and mold their replacements is, in my view, kind of odious with regards to democracy in general.
Absolutely. And this is why we've always advocated that no retiring councillor should be appointed on any committees after their retirement, because that perpetuates what they've put into place. I mean, how would you like to go in there and say, oh, what I proposed before is incorrect and I'm going to destroy it now under a new council? This is what this is all about, is to perpetuate their failed policies. And I think there's a huge conflict of interest with somebody still on council going out and creating a PAC. I mean, they are out there. Sutherland is supporting Davison as mayor. Keating is got a PAC supporting Collier-Cott, Dimong, Putmans, who's coming back, as some of his people. And it is very, very strange that they would do this. If there was no nefarious intention, why would you be doing it?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you bringing that to light and bringing some good small government issues to the table, because not enough PACs or candidates in general are doing so. So one more time before I let you go, and I'm sure we'll check in again before the end of the election here. Where can we find information on what you guys are doing?
You can go on www.leadcalgary.ca is our website, or you can follow us on Facebook at Lead Calgary. And by the way, if the Western Standard wants to publish our platform or do anything to comment on it, please feel free to do so.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcel. It's always good talking with you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure, Cory. Have a nice day.
Okay. Thanks for joining me today, Jeromy. We've talked a few times since you first announced you were going to throw your hat in on the ring. I think it was last spring was the last time we had a really extended interview. That was a long one. But we'll just, I know you're busy now campaigning. You got a lot to do, a lot to cover. But it's great to have you on to get up to date on how things are going. So how are you doing today?
Oh, living the dream. It's been pretty much nonstop. They had warned me that running for office is a marathon and not a sprint, but I think it's a marathon and then a sprint, and we're in the home stretch.
Yeah, well, and you've really got to start pounding on it now. So you started to release your campaign plan. So you say you had a 10-point plan going on. Your most recent one was on defending the police. Can you expand on where you're going with that?
Yeah, so I hate that it's even a controversial issue these days, but I think you can be for the good cops and against the bad cops. And I'm advocating to defend our police officers. And these are the folks who do the work on the front lines every single day to keep us safe. So it doesn't mean that I'm against, say, providing mental health supports, a lot of those preventative measures. We got to make sure that we're addressing issues in a preventative way. But I think this current approach to basically throw our front line under the bus has been absolutely ridiculous. So it's gone so bad that some politicians think that the very foundation of policing is racist, which is just such garbage. So I'm for the good cops, against the bad cops, and I want to make sure that they have the resources that they need to be able to do their jobs.
Yeah, well, and it's good and refreshing to hear. I mean, there's certainly problems with police forces. There's things we need to look at reforming. I mean, there have been some definite cases where they have abused their role and power. Individuals have, not the whole forces, and it's worth examining. But when they're constantly getting put down, demonized, told they're all racists, I could see it as being demoralizing to the point where they would actually make the problem worse. If they stay on, they're on with a bad attitude.
Well, I'm running to try to get City Hall back to basics, right? And when you think about why we have a local government, it's around safety, it's around security, services, right? So when we think about this defund the police agenda, it's actually gotten so bad that Calgary is now the only major North American city without a downtown police station. And it's really compounded a lot of the issues that we've seen around crime, vacancy, particularly in the downtown. So there's a social element to why we need to keep Calgary safe, but there's also an economic reason. So having that safety presence, that security presence will actually allow us to be able to fill these empty office towers quicker. So there's a return on investment there, not just on the human side, but also the financial one.
Yeah, well, I've been working downtown lately, you know, when I come in for the Western Standard at our offices here, and it's been an eye-opener for me. I hadn't really spent a lot of time downtown until this last year when I came back with the Standard. I mean, when I first moved to Calgary, I lived in an apartment downtown. You'd always have an occasional rougher element, and Crack Max already was beginning to get its reputation, but now it is really something else. I mean, for people who haven't been downtown lately, and it's saddening. I mean, we need to look somewhere broader than just policing. The amount of addicts and troubled people downtown is you know, unbelievable until you see it for yourself. But people have to feel safe. We're not going to draw business or citizens if we can't make people feel safe walking downtown. And me as a, you know, middle-aged guy in reasonable shape, I get a little uncomfortable even sometimes downtown and on the train. Yeah,
and our downtown station was actually closed at about the same time as the safe injection site opened, which has actually compounded the issues. So yeah, and to be clear though, I support proactive, preventative measures that help reduce the burden on the police. I'm also really in favor of, say, adequately funding, say, mental health, addiction supports, diversity training, and other accountability measures like, say, the body-worn camera program. So I really like the body-worn cameras because they help keep our police officers safe, but also the public safe by having more accurate evidence in the event of conflicts. But I think it's just so ridiculous to see these ideological calls to basically look at crime and safety and security as if it were some ideological experiment. And look, properly resourced essential services like police and fire, they benefit absolutely everybody. And I think at the end of the day, of course, our first responders are always the first to run in when everybody else is running out. And I just wanted to send a clear signal, strong and clear, that I'm always going to have our front lines backs.
Yeah, that's good, because I mean, there's unfortunately a vindictive element almost I saw in this. I mean, you guys kind of batted around back and forth, got to the point of saying, well, look, we can fund all the programs that you were talking about defunding the police in order to fund, and then we can maintain the full funding for the police. And the defund the police elements were furious with that. I mean, clearly their goal wasn't to fund other community programs. They just wanted to take a swipe at the police. And that's very counterproductive, to say the least.
Yeah, the problem is that this defund the police movement, it means different things to different people. I'm the first one to say, you know, there's some issues that we just cannot police our way out of. So it's not a case of throwing more money at the police per se. It's about making sure that they have the resources that they need to be able to succeed, and putting them into certain situations and asking them to be the be-all agency. It sets the police up for failure, but it also sets the community up for failure. So there's a lot of room for reform, improvement, revising, say, the Police Act to be able to address some of those accountability pieces. But radical calls to massively defund the police in a single year, it's sort of like scrapping an airplane in mid-flight for parts. It might make sense on a theoretical level, but the plane is just going to crash.
Yeah, well, I've got concerns about education, but I think if I started a rallying cry to defund the teachers, it wouldn't lead to better teaching or better attitudes or a better classroom environment. I don't see why people would say that would apply with police.
Yeah, so I'm against this defund the police, but that's promise number 2. Tomorrow, promise number 3 is going to be defund City Council's golden pension. So we'll see how that's received at the City Hall establishment.
Yeah, that's a big one, and you've always stood up and said you're not going to take that gold-plated pension, or they took umbrage with gold-plated when you were talking about before. Wasn't it platinum-plated you had to shift to?
Well, you know what, whatever you want to call it, it seems like Calgarian taxpayers are responsible for about $5 for every $1 that the elected official puts in. And whatever you want to call it, golden, platinum, vibranium, all the rest, it has to change. And I believe so much in leading by example. How can the politicians be accepting these platinum perks at the same time as we're asking city staff to be able to do more of the same or more with less? You know, it just doesn't compute. That's not how leadership works.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that. Like, it is a challenging time, and we've seen this done before. I mean, in the 90s, yeah, you're a little young to really remember directly, but I do. And it was tough. I mean, when people have their jobs and there's feeling of security, and you're asking them to take a haircut and reduce their wages, that they're not going to be happy with it. Nobody ever is. But the one thing I think, you know, Ralph Klein did right, and I know people have some pretty mixed views on his history, but the first thing he did was cut his own pension, cut their own salary by a degree, and then at least they could say, okay, we've done it. Now we can ask you to do it. Because if you won't do it first, you have no real moral basis to do so.
Yeah, look, I'm not asking anybody to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. And when I was elected, the first thing that I did was to turn down the pension. And man, it was probably the most financially costly decision I've made, but it was also the most politically costly, because I would say that it really set me on a collision course with an out-of-touch establishment that's just not used to being challenged in that way. And so many of these politicians, say, for example, the other councillors running for mayor, they campaigned on reform, but the moment that they're elected, they take the perks just like everybody else. You know, it's ridiculous. It feeds into the cynicism that everyday folks have about politicians these days.
Well, it's something. So we're going to have, no matter what happens, a turnover of council and in the mayor's office like we haven't seen in a generation. One of the areas that's been a critique with you is you stand your ground, you speak your mind, but it also has made it difficult sometimes, I guess, when you've got a council determined for groupthink. But assuming you become mayor, you're just one vote, as people like to point out. But it is a role of leadership. It's a role of example. It's kind of a role of trying to keep a productive council going, trying to keep those meetings moving in a fluid way. I mean, there's going to be some fireworks and such, but what sort of planning have you got to make sure it's as, you know, fluid and productive as possible?
Well, I'm very fortunate that, say, the 4 or 5 people who are still running are some of the people who have been my strongest allies and supporters, people like Councillor Sean Chu, Peter DeMong, and others. So if I am fortunate enough to be mayor, I'd be inheriting a core team of people who feel the same way, not in support of this defund ideology, not in support of the runaway spending. So I'd be inheriting that core team. Another thing, though, is that the mayor is one vote, but the mayor has such strong control over the agenda, how things get voted on, when, say, for a good example would be, say, us getting together, Cory, with a few friends and deciding, well, should we order pizza or should we order Chinese food? Maybe we elect you mayor, and then you, as mayor, you put it up to a vote. You'd say, well, let's vote on this. What kind of pizza would you like? Pizza 73 or Pizza Hut? So still your one vote, but your control over the agenda sets a lot of things. But otherwise, I think the mayor is going to have to be three things. He or she is going to have to be cheerleader, coach, and quarterback, but not necessarily all three things. And it's a bit of a cliche, but they say of Al Dur and Dave Brown-Kanye that they could count to 8, but it was always a different 8 votes that they got, spreading around the glory, giving credit where it's due, allowing other city councilors to take ownership and to really just generate buy-in. And I think that that's something that our next mayor is going to have to do. And then lastly, just really going on the road, telling our story, going on the hunt for investment, economic development. That is just going to be so crucial to getting Calgarians back to work.
Yeah, well, and a large part of it, I guess it's beyond the control of city council. It's beyond just about anybody's control. We might as well touch on it. I mean, it's the dominant issue right now. We have a pandemic going on. What do you feel the city can do to help get this under control, help make people feel safer, help us feel more, just secure in general, as much as you can?
So I'm vaccinated. I encourage others to be vaccinated if they're able to. There's a lot we can do around just education, providing more opportunities for that. And then otherwise, I think the City Hall needs to focus on areas within its legal jurisdiction. We have so many issues around our capital budget, spending, crime, security, transparency, that we have to address these things. So at the end of the day, City Hall can't be making the situation worse for folks. And that's what we've seen by City Council embracing this defund the police ideology, massive tax increases. Say, for example, last year during the first wave, when Calgarians were forced out of work, Calgary City Council passed a 7.5% increase. It's astounding, 7.5% increase on the typical homeowner. And now we have some other councillors who are running for mayor, and they're trying to run away from the record. Well, they can run, but they can't hide. So what I'm advocating for actually is a 4-year property tax freeze to be able to give the certainty for both residents and businesses to be able to get back on their feet. And I think that 4-year property tax freeze until 2025, that is going to be essential to opening up Calgary for investment and throwing a lifeline to struggling families, seniors, and residents.
Well, it's a nice change to hear, as opposed to the once every 4 years tax freeze that we used to have, when it would always be election year, and suddenly the city could find enough money to not hike your taxes, but then they make up for it in the subsequent 3 years afterwards. So coming into things right off the bat, looking at a 4-year freeze is a nice. I mean, we are looking at some tough times economically, probably in the very near future, and then a little relief on the property taxes in general would certainly go a long ways to helping people out.
Yeah, I was just chatting with a local small business owner, and the way they described it to me is they felt like they had hit rock bottom, and now they're climbing their way up a ladder, and the ladder has been greased. They think they got it, but they just need the people at the top to stop shaking, and they're going to be able to get out of the hole. So I think that's really what City Hall needs to be, is stop compounding these issues, stop defunding the police, stop raising the budgets needlessly, so that we can actually bring back some stability, some certainty, some predictability back to this town.
Great. Well, it's a good check-in. The time goes quickly when I've got you on, but there'll be more to talk about as the campaign unfolds. Is there anything else you'd like to add, and where can people find more information about your campaign if they want to know more about you or to lend you a hand?
Yeah, over the next week or so, we're going to be releasing the rest of my 10-point plan. It's really a blueprint for change. This election is the most important Calgarians we'll ever see, I think, in our lifetimes, if not in the history of our city. Like, this is very much about change versus more of the same. I think Calgarians have been clear. We cannot continue to tax and spend our way that we have for the past 10 years. Taxes have skyrocketed, and they've really eroded our competitive advantage, not just for businesses, but to be an attractive place for people to want to live and to raise their families. So I would say reach out to us anytime. Our website's jeromy.ca. We're releasing a new campaign platform commitment every single day for the next 10 days or so. Just very, very excited for this opportunity. And again, I believe that I'm the only candidate with a proven record. Every candidate for mayor is basically going to be telling you the same things. But as a city councilor currently, I know enough about the City Hall bureaucracy, the system, to be able to hit the ground running. And I have a proven record of actually standing up for my constituents, not just when it's been easy, but also when it's been really tough and at great personal expense, like turning down the pension. So again, I think I'm the only one with the credibility and the plan to be able to get this done.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. We'll certainly be watching the rest of your platform unfolding with great interest, and the rest of the campaign. It's going to go fast. It's coming up on us quickly here. So,
and don't forget to vote. Don't forget to vote. It starts on October 4th in just a couple of days. So you have the opportunity soon.
Beat the lineups. Okay, thanks, Jeromy, and good luck.
Okay, thank you.